This is the Comics Alternative, on location and talking with creators at HeroesCon 2016. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative on location. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And on this episode, we're going to share with you the various interviews we did from the floor of Artist Alley at HeroesCon 2016. But before we get to those interviews, we want to let all of you guys know that this episode of the Comics Alternative on location is brought to you by the wonderful folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There, you're going to find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off cover price. And every single month, you're going to find some unbelievable specials. Sometimes those specials will be at 45% off cover price, sometimes at 50% off cover, but often you can find discounts that go higher from there.
That's right, and this month, as in every month, you can find bundles where you can get deeper discounts for multiple comics from the same publisher, and those discounts are deeper than you would get if you bought those comics individually. This month they have bundles from Marvel, several bundles from DC, and including Vertigo and Valiant, and those bundles range from 45 to 50% off.
That's right. You can always find great discounts every month at Discount Comic Book Service. So check them out for the month of June. Go to dcbservice.com for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you. That's right. You know, Andy, we like to do as many interviews as we can when we go to these conventions. And I had wondered if we were going to do many this year because I did none the very first day. And going into Saturday, I was feeling a little lazy.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you started out with the pronoun we, because our listeners may notice a significant paucity of interviews by me, because while you may have felt lazy the first day, I pretty much lazed through the entire weekend. Though I did arrange our interview with Miss and Kevin, that Miss Lasco Gross and Kevin Colden, which you can get as a separate episode. That's and right. I did talk to other creators about doing interviews in the future. So I wasn't completely slumming.
I wasn't suggesting that, was I?
No, but I was.
In all seriousness, not only do we get to do these brief interviews there at the con, but we also use the con to set up occasions where we can do longer, more involved one-on-one interviews later in the year, which we did.
Yes, and so I'm going to be looking forward to some of those that will be coming up in the future.
Mm-hmm. But for right now, we want to share with you brief interviews that I did with Amanda Rachels, Carla Pacheco, Andy Hirsch, friend of the show, Tom Neely, Keenan Marshall Keller, Magdalene Visaggio, Tom Henges, Craig Yo, Ryan Brown, Andy Runton, Enrica Jang, Oliver Ono, Jeremy Hahn, and Jason Hurley.
God, I feel even worse now.
Yeah, I did more than I thought I did.
Well, you made up for me.
I'm here with Amanda Rachels. She is the artist of Flesh of White, which is published through Inverse. How is HeroesCon going for you, Amanda?
It's great. This is one of the really fun shows. You get to see a whole lot of artists and see all the... there's a lot of independent books here that I'm really excited about seeing.
Now, tell us, for our listeners who aren't familiar with Inverse and specifically with Flesh of White, about Flesh of White. What is your book about?
Flesh of White is about a real phenomenon that takes place in Kenya and Tanzania and Africa, where people with albinism are hunted for their body parts because witch doctors use them as components in spells that they sell to people for a good marriage or for wealth. And our story is based on that. But it has a supernatural element to it. It's about a mother protecting her baby who's born with albinism from a witch doctor who's learned of his existence and wants to take him as part of his dark magic spell.
Now, and you're the artist, but Erica Heflin is the writer.
Yeah, Erica Heflin's the writer. She does Wonderland for Zenoscope.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've worked on a few projects together, and this one, she tells it from a mother's point of view, and she just has a really passionate voice, and she tells a great story. I'm a fan of hers even when I'm not working with her, so she's awesome.
So you say Erica does work for Zenoscope. Did you know her before that, or did you meet her through that?
Yeah, we worked together a bit before that. I don't think that she's on the book anymore. I think she just recently wrapped up. But, yeah, we did a lot of work with Greyhaven, an anthology, their anthology series called The Gathering. We met through that, and we've done a few short projects together, and Flesh of White was our first long-form project together.
Now, the publisher Inverse, what can you tell us about Inverse?
Inverse Press is my imprint. My partner Kevin Laporte and I started it. We're based out of the Mobile, Alabama area, and we started it with a book called Clown Town that's evolved into a story called Vicious Circus. And so we've taken our little killer clowns and branched out into a few other titles, but all of our books tend to wind up being horror. We just have dark senses of humor, I suppose, and that's how they end up. But we've got a pretty wide variety of titles now. We have a sci-fi story. We've got a steampunk going. These are all currently in production. And, the few that I do, I'm doing a Shakespeare adaptation right now of Titus Andronicus that Kevin Laporte has adapted. And it's a lot of fun. We're getting really busy. We've just gotten into previews with Flesh of White, so we're hoping to continue. We've got material for the next year, so we're excited.
Yeah. No, okay, so you just said that you're doing an adaptation of Titus Andronicus. It has to be one of the bloodiest play Shakespeare ever did. Oh, so you've got sample art here of the bloodiness. So why? Okay, here's a question. Why choose that play to adapt? Because of the action, or because most people don't think of Titus Andronicus when they think of Shakespeare?
That's definitely not the first one that people think about. Kevin was not a Shakespeare fan until I showed him Titus. I said, "You need to read this," and he said, "Wow, I wasn't expecting that." And he decided, do you want to draw this? Because I'd been looking for something. I'm a Shakespeare nerd, and I like the film, so I showed him the film, and it's really, I don't know, it's one of those deliciously evil stories. They've got the best villain in that one. Aaron is the greatest Shakespeare villain. I like Iago, but that's all right. But yeah, it's something different. And I love Shakespeare, but not a lot of people get to read it because it's kind of intimidating. So it translates really well to comics. Even we're doing it as science fiction, and the story translates so well into comics. Hopefully it'll make it a little more accessible for people who might not otherwise pick it up. So it's kind of fun.
Now, this is still in production now. You're still working on this. Do you have any sense of when you'll be finished and ready to publish?
That one, I'm hoping to be finished with that one closer to the end of the year. We're doing each act as a separate collection. We're going to take it to Kickstarter a little bit later in the year. But I'm not coloring this one. Normally, in the past, I've colored my own work, but I have a colorist, Nathan Lewis, that I'm working with, who's doing a killer job on it, so it's going a little bit quicker than other projects in the past.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago another title that concerns a clown. So let me use this as a segue as to how I met you yesterday. And I found this not only really interesting but quite charming, is that you came up to the Comics Alternative table here at HeroesCon, and you introduced yourself. You were telling me about your title, Flesh of White. But you did so by saying that you are a follower of the podcast, which, we always enjoy hearing people come up and say, "We've listened to your podcast before. It's nice to meet you guys." But it's not often that an artist comes up and tells us, "I listened to your podcast, and I'm a comics artist myself. So you've been following the comics alternative for a while.
Yeah, we listen to you in the mornings when Kevin is getting ready to go to work. That's what we all listen to.
So, and Kevin is your significant other?
Yeah, my business partner, my life partner, and everything.
So we've become a part of your family. So the two guys with PhDs, we're right there with you in a good way.
Oh, absolutely. And he's in mental health. He has his master's in psychology, and he likes to hear you guys' opinions on it, just from I don't know, a very well-read and educated point of view.
Well, that makes us feel good. It let's just say warms the cockles of our hearts. So if people wanted to find out more about Flesh of White, or I guess in a broader sense, Inverse, where would they go to online?
InversePress.com is our main site. ShakespeareComic.com is we just put that up, and we're going to be offering previews of Titus there very soon. And you can check us out on Facebook at Facebook.com/InversePress, and I am Facebook.com/Amanda Rachel's Art, or at Amanda Rachel's on Twitter and all the other internets.
Well, Amanda, thank you very much for taking the time and talking with me for the podcast. Good luck with your work, Shakespeare, Flesh of White, and everything. I know you're doing some commission work right now, so you keep busy.
Thank you so much. I'll be listening.
I'm standing here with Carla Pacheco, and I was introduced to her yesterday by a friend of ours, Andy Hirsch. In fact, her table is right beside Andy, and you were telling me, Carla, yesterday about this book that looks like a picture book, but it's not at all. It's called Inspector Pancake. So I'd like for you to do a couple of things, if you could. Describe the book, the way that it looks, and then to tell us what it's about.
All right, so the book is Inspector Pancakes Helps the President of France Solve the White Orchid Murders. It looks very much like a Little Golden Book, a very classic Little Golden Book. It's about a little dog who flies to France every day to help the president solve crimes. So the twist with my book is that it's got two stories. It has a large print story that is a very cute children's story that you can read aloud, and then there's a fine print story that is a very dark and graphic noir about murders. So if you're reading it aloud, you're reading about a little dog helping the president of France find his missing croissant. If you're not with any children in the room, hopefully, you get to read a story about the Inspector Pancakes helping the president of France find the White Orchid killer.
So the way you're describing this, and from what I've seen of the book, I mean, there's something, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of subversive about this. I mean, something that looks so much like a Little Golden Book has a seedy underside, and that's a little exciting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do, I have a thing called Carla Apologies, which are really lovely, fancy Art Deco postcards made up of terrible things I have said. I have really, really fancy door hangers that just say, "I'm getting my bone on." Pretty much, and the other side says, "fuck off." So pretty much everything I do tends to be things that are very cute, fancy, and then are just terrible. With Inspector Pancakes, it looks very, very much like a Little Golden Book. It even has like the little golden spine with the pattern on it, which looks just like the Little Golden Book pattern until you look closer and realize it's actually made up of knives and orchids, along with croissants and little paw prints. So I think a lot of what does attract me to the work that I do, that gets me excited about the work that I do, is, you know, I don't necessarily call it subversive, but there's a certain type of edge of comedy that I enjoy doing. I came up writing for Cracked and National Lampoon. I've been a comedy writer for 15 years. I've just recently started getting into comics, and Inspector Pancakes is kind of a weird little niche that was kind of an accident, but it's the type of comedy I like, which is what I call, I guess, it's not shock humor, but it's definitely edge play.
So you worked for Kraken National Lampoon.
Yeah. I used to write comedy and such. Also worked for a few video games and companies, but yeah, basically in the past couple years hadn't really been doing anything, so now I'm back writing filthy comics and really terrible children's books.
Well, I guess maybe on the filthy part, another title that you mentioned to me the other day was Dreadful Sirens, and how did you describe this to me?
A naked titty pirate violence comic.
And I think that description is its selling point.
Yes, it's technically The Terrible Adventures of Anne Bonny and Mary Read. It is not exactly historically accurate, but most of history isn't really that historically accurate anyway, so we might as well put a lot of sex and violence in it, which, to be honest, that's probably more historically accurate than what you read in, Pym's History of the Pirates. So, but yeah, it's a fun little romp. If you go to dreadfulsirens.com, you can read the whole thing either online or download the entire first chapter, pay what you want on Gumroad for free. Or you could pay me. That's cool too. Always like money, but it's really fun. It's with artist and my co-creator Steve LeCouliard. I'd been approaching a couple different artists of like, hey, what would you like to work on? And Steve was like, I really want to do a comic about Anne Bonny and Mary Read. And I was like, oh, I love them, so yeah, let's do it, and let's make it filthy with almost like Warner Brothers level violence, in that it's kind of cartoonish and over the top, but it's also incredibly gory. But yeah, we have a lot of fun with it. I'm really proud of it. So
this is online. So as you mentioned, they can go to the website. So which is what
dreadfulsirens.com.
Dreadfulsirens.com. Any plans to put this out in hard copy?
We're working on chapter 2 right now. It's been, Steve has a day job and a family, and it's not a lazy lackabout like I am, so he actually has responsibilities. So it's taken us a little while to get going on chapter 2, but we're working on it right now. Once we get that completed, then I think we are going to try to combine it into a hard copy. So we've kind of got the first chapter is sort of like just a brief 10-page teaser. The next one will be a 2-part story, and then I think at that point we'll probably either be doing a Kickstarter or doing a self-publish to get it in print.
Okay. And, your humor definitely comes out during this interview and the kind of things that you do, the titles that you've been describing. But I have to say, and our listeners can't see this because we're not a video podcast, as I'm talking with you, I'm looking at the necklace that you have on, Walnut Fucker, and I don't even know what that means.
Yes, well, it turns out mynamenecklace.com will put whatever you actually want on a necklace. To describe it, it looks like one of those fancy little, like, Sex and the City name necklaces, but I had them put Walnut Fucker on it. I have also here the Dumbball machine, which is a vending machine that looks like a kid's candy machine, like with the little capsules in it. But instead, there are 44 different types of decorative cusses inside there. They're little fancy, they look like little fancy magnets with really, really terrible cusses on them, including Walnut Fucker. One says Suckin' Dick for Jesus, Clown Car Vagina, Cunt Factory. So yeah, that's pretty much my sense of humor.
And I think it's something that I want to check out more. And so if someone wants to find out more about your art, your comics, and not just Dreadful Sirens, how can they find you?
All of my work is kind of the big umbrella site is underthewagon.com. So imagine being so far off the wagon, you are under the wagon. So underthewagon.com, inspectorpancakes.com, dreadfulsirens.com, and I am incredibly overly active on Twitter. That is the Carla Pacheco on Twitter. So TheKarlaPacheco on Twitter, and there you will find me frequently traveling across the country or just getting up to really terrible adventures or posting a lot of pictures with food hanging out of my mouth.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely check you out and follow you on Twitter. Carla, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
moment ago, I was talking with Carla, whose table is right beside friend of the show, Andy Hirsch. And not only is Andy a friend and a friend of the show, but for those of you who listen to the podcast, you should know this already because we mentioned it a number of times. Andy has designed our brand new Comics Alternative logo, and for that we're very thankful, which is now... It now graces our T-shirts that we had printed up just that last week. So, anyway, Andy is here at HeroesCon. How's it going, Andy?
It's going pretty good. It's good to see you. We came a long way, to end up in the same place, right?
Yeah. What was the last time we saw each other? About 3 weeks ago at Collected?
Yeah, I think we last saw each other at Collected, about 1,000 miles away. Yeah. But, yeah, here we are again.
So now, last year you weren't able to come to HeroesCon. This year you are. How is this year turning out for you, especially compared to the previous times you've been here?
So far, I think we're about on track. I skipped last year because I just didn't have anything new. I was working on Varmints, which is just a year of work where I didn't have any of my regular monthly stuff coming out. But now I got my new stuff. I got all the Peculiars issues set up. I got more Garfields. I got this Littlest Hobo Zine stickers. I got, all sorts of new stuff this time.
Okay, let's talk a couple of minutes about Varmints, because you showed me yesterday you have just one copy, a finished copy from First Second. You got it right before you came to North Carolina, right?
Right. Hot off the presses.
Yes. So how did it feel to you to finally get the finished product in your hand?
It's kind of weird because, I finished it, how long ago would it have been? 8 months ago things got turned in, and now it finally shows up. I'm like, I've done a whole book since then. I'm halfway through doing another book since then, and it's still not actually going to be out for a while. It's very different from working on the monthly books where you get very rapidly you get to see the finished product. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's nice to finally see this again. But I'm super happy with how it printed, and I'm excited to be able to start actually promoting it now that it's within reach, right?
Now, with First Second, is there anything you're not able to say about the book now, or is it basically you can show people, you can tell people, there's nothing embargoed?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Are you asking me to tell you how it ends? Is that what you're asking?
No, not for spoilers. I'm just wondering, even though, the book's coming out in September, right?
Right.
Okay, so, we have a few months before then, and I'm wondering, you got a copy. Did anyone at the press say, kind of keep it under wraps, we wanted you to see it, but don't show it around too much? You don't want to give interviews until about a month before? I don't know.
I don't think so, because some galleys have gone out in the past couple months, and interviews are being set up. I know they got a marketing team, so they've got their plan and everything for that. So I'm more than welcome to share things with my friends, though, because that's what I'm here for.
And by the way, when we interview you, we won't have to go through Gina at First Second.
You won't.
Isn't that what you told me?
Yeah, I'll talk to you no matter when. It's all right.
Okay, so Varmints is coming out in September, but something that just recently wrapped up is the Baker Street Peculiars. And issue number 4 came out, what, was it late last month?
It was last week.
Oh, was it just last week?
Yeah, it was last week.
Now, you were at our shop, Collected. There was, what did you guys, I wasn't able to make it. What happened there?
We just had a table set up for a small signing. And, it's just the Wednesday crowd coming in and see if I could get some people to check it out, because we had we had a full run, so people who had missed the first issue had a chance to get on and check everything out, since it'll be a little bit until it trades out, which I think is set for January, as far as I know. At least that's what the pre-order page says.
Yeah, so if it was last Wednesday, I was already in North Carolina seeing to a few things before the con, so I wouldn't have even been able to make it, anyhow. So, but did you have a good turnout there?
Yeah, it was good. I kind of like going there just to talk to the staff. They're nice there. It's
as we both know.
Yeah, it's my place.
Yeah. So now this, the last issue came out just last week. So I don't know if you've heard much reaction to not just the last issue, but to the series as a whole. Do you get a sense that there may be another narrative arc with Baker Street Peculiars?
We certainly left it open some more. It's gonna be some long-term tracking to see if it catches on enough to justify the investment in doing that, on Boom's side at least. So, but with the collection, I think because a lot of all ages book, it's hard in the floppy market, especially when the whole floppies are slowing anyhow. But hopefully the collection will do well in libraries, bookstores, that sort of thing. So that's the hope, at least, because it's a good book. I'm proud of it, and I'm hoping that more people get a chance to read it.
I mean, it's a great title. I didn't know at what point with something like this, it's a limited series, 4 issues, at what point does the publisher, along with the creative team, decide, I think we may be able to make a go of another volume of the title, but you're suggesting that it may not be until the trade comes out and you see how that does that you would get a better sense of another volume?
I mean, that would be my guess, at least, as far as I know. Yeah.
So, we've talked to you before about Garfield, Varmint, Baker Street Peculiars. What else are you doing right now?
I'm working on another book for First Second that I can't really talk too much about yet, and because I still got another book to come out first. I got to worry about talking about that one, right? But as soon as that's ready, man, I'm excited to talk about that one too. Oh man.
I won't say anything, but you did tell me off mic something about that, and let's just say that it's going to be great.
Oh, well, thank you.
I mean, of course it's going to be great, but it's going to be great in another kind of context.
Well, it's a subject I'm very enthusiastic about, so...
Well, Andy, I'll see you all the time, but I hope that the rest of your HeroesCon goes very well.
Thanks, me too. I'm doing an all-ages panel tomorrow, so that should be fun.
Oh, what time is that?
It's at noon. Chris Schweizer's moderating it, and some pals are on there. It's going to be a good time.
I want to go see that. I have a panel soon after that, so I don't know if I will be able to go to the one before.
Maybe it's in the same room. You'll have to check.
Who knows? We may have to kick you out.
You might not be able to avoid it.
Okay, take care, Andy.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for talking to me.
We had these guys on the Comics Alternative a little more than a year ago, but last time I talked with them was actually last year's HeroesCon. This is Tom Neely and Keenan Marshall Keller. And when we spoke, you were still in the heat of the moment of the Humans. That's wrapped up, at least for now. So how do you think the landing went?
Really well. I mean, we made it through.
Yeah, we survived the whole experience. That's the key. But
yeah, survived our first monthly series, which was good. And I think it went over well. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're super happy with the way it came out. And Volume 2 just came out last month, collecting the whole thing. So
it's good to feel like we have the full story out there now, and now we can move on to like a next chapter, basically. So.
And actually, on that topic, I was over here talking with you guys earlier today, and you said that there's plans for more of human stories.
Yeah, definitely. We're working on a special Triple Xmas comic coming out for December.
Christmas issue.
Yeah, Christmas issue. That'll be an oversized comic. It'll be like over 30 page. Be like a 40-page comic. And then after that, we have a second arc of the human story called The Jungle, which we'll be working on next year. Yeah. So.
Okay, how Triple X will the Christmas special be?
As Triple X as any of the Humans comics. So yeah. I mean, there's no sex shown in the issue.
Yeah, there is on the very first page. I added it. It wasn't in the script, but I added it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty raunchy. It's fun. Its idea is just like, what's the dumbest thing we could think of doing? A Christmas special. So we decided that'll be the most strange and perverse thing to do. So,
if Chaykin and Black Kiss can do a Christmas special, why not the Humans?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things. As a kid, there was always, like the horrible consumerism of trying to sell Christmas to you, and there's Christmas specials of everything, like California Raisins and Garfield and all this horrible shit. So I want to do one good Christmas special.
All about cocaine and
cocaine, drugs
and
partying is what it's about.
So what can you tell us about this next narrative arc of the Humans that you've started to work on?
It's we don't want to say too much, but basically it's going to follow the surviving members of the Humans from the end of issue 10 and dealing with the ramifications of what they just did. So the short answer is it's our apes in prison idea.
Okay. Maybe you can do something like Orange is the New Black, like with an orangutan.
I'm very excited because I love, genre. So this is like we went from biker exploitation, and now we can go into like prison genre and play with that a lot. So very, very excited about it.
Now, you were also telling me about a project that you have working or percolating that is going to be coming to fruition before this next narrative arc of the Humans.
Yes, possibly. We're not 100% sure on that, but our plans are to maybe do a short miniseries that's outside of the Humans world and has nothing to do with it as a collaborative team before The Jungle comes out. We want to spread our wings a little bit and maybe get more people into us as artists and creators that we can bring back to the Humans when we come back to it as well. So, and yeah, that's just, you don't want to say too much about that either since it's not starting yet, but it's basically a buddy gore horror period piece comedy.
Horror comedy, yeah. I've also got like 2 other graphic novels that I'm tentatively planning. They're still very early, and I'm not sure what'll come next, but yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff going on.
Now, with all of these projects, both the individual one, Tom, and this new collaboration, also be with Image?
We're hoping...
The Jungle will, and hopefully the other collaboration will, too.
Yeah, The Resurrectionist is the title, the working title right now. That one, we're hoping to go with Image. They seem to have good feedback when we mentioned it to them, but we just haven't been able to sit down and actually be like, yeah, let's do it. So hopefully at Comic-Con we'll talk to them and get it hammered down. If not, we'll shop it around. But I think its perfect home would be at Image, actually. So it's unlike any other comic that's out there. And in the same way that The Humans is unlike any other comic. It'll be a brand new thing people have never seen. So.
Well, one of the things we talked about with that original interview that we did a little more than a year ago was how kind of outrageous, over the top, and at times maybe in your face The Humans actually was. Do you think that now that you've completed the series, do you think that really worked to its benefit, or were there any potential drawbacks to the extreme nature of some of it?
There's definitely drawbacks, just because we probably turned off some people just based on like ape cock and the violence. But to us, it's like I'm so proud of the final product now. It was what it needed to be. It needed to be that aggressively outrageous, or why bother? That's the way we were seeing it. Like, if we're going to do this, we need to do it all the way,
Right.
And it made it more fun to push it that far and that hard. So, but yeah, there's probably a little bit of drawbacks, but I don't really care about the people that would be turned off on that. We're looking for the people that would be turned on by it. So
the right readers.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, keep being extreme and keep doing what you're doing. And guys, thank you very much for taking the time and talking with us again.
Hey,
thanks so much.
Good to see you again.
I'm at the table of Magdalene Visaggio. Her new book is Kim and Kim. And I've heard about this from, as I was telling you a moment ago, our store manager at my local shop. So I haven't read it yet. I'm not familiar with it. Educate me and educate the listeners.
All right, so Kim and Kim is about a couple of best friends who decided to start their own interdimensional bounty hunting business, so that they're just kind of like out there just like trying to get through their lives and pay their rent and keep their shit together while they're chasing down criminals across space and time. They're like pretty good at the bounty hunting part, but managing the rest of their lives are a total disaster at. And while they're just trying to get some rent money, they end up on a giant in way over their heads kind of adventure. So
you're the writer of this, correct? Now, what gave you the idea for this story?
That's a super complicated question. It's not like I had like a really clear original inspiration for the idea. It's just a whole lot of things that I've always wanted to do in storytelling. I'm just kind of doing all at once. So like I really like road stories and I really like buddy stories. I've always wanted to do something like this female-centric. I really like friendships in media, so I want to do something about that. I like the Han and Chewie dynamic. I've wanted to do something where you've got people just kind of on the margins, flying around in space and stuff, and I really like rock and roll subcultures. So there's a whole lot of stuff playing into this.
Now, when you were describing this to me and the way that my store manager described it to me as well, I couldn't help but think, road trip, women, immediately Thelma and Louise, and I'm wondering how often do people hear the setup and think Thelma and Louise?
I couldn't tell you. It hasn't been brought up to me that much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, although we are kind of owning that. We have a variant cover that's based on the Thelma and Louise movie poster.
Oh, okay. But that's interesting that you haven't gotten that, because I would think that would become so hackneyed that you would be offended that I would ask the question.
I think it's a generational thing. Like, that movie came out like 30 years ago, so I think if we were doing this book in the mid-90s, that probably would have happened a lot more. Most of the comparisons that I get are to some specific animes, things like Dirty Pair, which still has a really solid fan base, or Cowboy Bebop.
Okay. Now, you mentioned anime and manga. I mean, is that? Do you have an interest in that? Is that where you pull some of your creative inspiration?
It's actually really interesting because I'm not a super big anime fan, but two of the really major influences on Kim and Kim are animes that I've watched repeatedly and really stick with me, and that's Fooly Cooly and Cowboy Bebop.
Okay. Now, Cowboy Bebop I have heard of, not the first one, though.
So Fooly Cooly is a really, really weird 6-episode anime from, I want to say like 2003-ish. I'm not really sure the release date on that. And 2002, apparently, I'm being signaled.
We got our own fact checker we didn't even know we had here. Thank you. Yeah.
It's a really, really bizarre show in which lots and lots of things happen, and it's very difficult to describe. But it's really ultimately sort of a coming-of-age story about this kid in this really weird town, and his wrestles with his own growing maturity and the what it's like when you're entering into adolescence and you have to let go of things. But like one of the things that I love about Fooly Cooly is the director had this whole approach where he just kind of was going to not let I don't have a good reason for that be an argument against something. So like if he just wanted to do something because he thought it would be like a really cool or a fun idea, so he just did it. So like one of the basic things in the show is that the main character fights monsters that come out of his head because he has a wormhole in his head. But like why not? Like it's never really explained why it's in there or what it's doing or why any of this is happening.
You just go with it.
Yeah, exactly. And so just go with it is something I've really been trying to do with Kim and Kim.
Okay, so it has a free-willing quality to it.
Yeah, totally. It's super hectic, and it's super loud, and there's just a whole bunch of throwing shit against the wall and seeing what sticks. So, like in the second issue, just kind of in the middle of it, a giant sandworm from the necrosphere just kind of shows up, and they have to fight it. And I just kind of started thinking, as I'm working on stories, like, whatever pops into my head, I just write it down, and then I think, well, what would make sense for the kind of story I'm trying to tell, and not what's internally consistent with the universe.
Okay, so is this going to be a limited series? Do you have a particular endpoint in sight, or are you thinking in terms of narrative arcs? In other words, how long do you think this series will run for?
Kim and Kim is contracted for 4 issues. We have been discussing a second volume at some point, but right now we're getting 4.
Now, this is coming out through Black Mask, and I have noticed more and more titles over the past, year or two coming out from Black Mask. How did you come to Black Mask as a publisher for Kim and Kim?
I've been wanting to work with Black Mask for a while, since I first heard about them about a year and a half ago. Because they do a lot of really, really interesting, weird things. They're really willing to take storytelling risks, and their only editorial strategy is letting people tell their own stories. And that's really cool, and you don't get a lot of that in publishing. And so when I was shopping Kim and Kim around, I really wanted to take it to Black Mask, but I didn't have any contacts there, and they didn't have an open submission policy at the time. So I took advantage of what connections I had, and I submitted it elsewhere, and I didn't really get any traction. And then at some point, they opened up their submission policies, and they have a form on their website now. And so I just filled out my form, which took forever because it's a massive form. I spent 2.5 hours putting this together because I couldn't just use my existing pitch. I had to give them what they wanted, which is really in-depth, detailed questions outlining your vision for the book and why you're the person to write it and why this is your story and why it means something to you, because that's what they want, is to push really passionate creators with stories that are important to them. And so I just did that, and they got back to me that night about picking up the book.
Oh, geez. Wow, that's quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so if our listeners want to find out more about Kim and Kim and about you and your work, in addition to the Black Mask website, where else could they go?
Well, my website is not currently built. So I can't send you to my website, but I
Twitter account?
My Twitter account, I'm at magsvisaggs. That's MAGSVISAGGS.
Okay. So they can find out more about your work there. And Magdalene, I want to thank you very much for taking the time and talking on the Comics Alternative. Good luck with this series.
All right, thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Right now, I am standing in the presence of greatness. Both of these individuals have been nominated this year for Eisner Awards in different categories, but both are nominated. Tom Heinches and Craig Yo. And I think we've talked with Craig before on the podcast.
Once or twice.
Yes. But this is the first time we've had you, Tom. How's it going?
I'm very privileged. I don't want to correct you, but I think you're in the presence of adequacy, not greatness.
Well, we'll see when the awards are given out next month. Okay, so let's talk about the nominations. I know that we've three talked about this off mic, but now this is something for our listeners to listen to and share. So what were your feelings? You were telling me, Tom, that you've been around for years, and this is your first nomination. How did that feel?
Well, it only took us 22 years to become an overnight success, so that's wonderful. And it's truly great to be part of the conversation, be in the mix of the other nominees. I don't say that with false humility. I truly believe it.
Now, I mean, we've mentioned Hogan's Alley on the podcast several times before, but for those who don't know about this, how would you describe the publication?
Well, we primarily cover vintage newspaper cartooning. That's always been our bread and butter, but we do cover contemporary comics, both comic books, comic strips, animation. We cast a fairly wide net, but our bread and butter, like I said, has always been vintage cartooning from the newspapers.
Yeah. So you're nominated in terms of getting back to the Eisners for the journalism category.
Right. Best Comics Magazine. We're going up against superheroes, which is never fun. Superheroes always win in the end. We're hoping we can buck that trend.
Okay. So you've been around for a while, but if someone... If someone wanted to subscribe, give us the URL where they can go and find out more info.
Thank you for asking. We're at hoganmag.com is our website, and there's a very obvious button for subscribing and buying back issues. On Free Comic Book Day, we send anyone who sends us an email a free copy, so it's easy to sample us on Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah. And have you found that... Has the nomination garnered a bit more attention? Have you noticed any kind of uptick in correspondence or maybe visits to your site?
My cell phone was blowing up the day the nominations came out, with everybody very excited for me, which of course was extremely gratifying. I haven't noticed any uptick in business as a result of the nomination. I've noticed an uptick in my fragile self-esteem, which is always nice.
Okay, now I'm talking with both of you, not just because Tom and Craig, you're both Eisner nominees this year, but your tables are right next to each other at HeroesCon. And in fact, I think that you're in a very key space. Although, Craig, you said earlier today you're not as thrilled with where you are this year.
Well, this is my favorite convention. I love HeroesCon. I just, it's just a matter of I'm never happy. So, but we really enjoyed our table location last year. But I'm thrilled to be at this whole convention. So I don't want to go on record saying I'm not happy about this, because I'm thrilled to be here. I just.
Well, I didn't mean to paint you as a curmudgeon.
No. It's just I'm not. Location as far as real estate, and I'm not quite sure this is the right location, but. If I was at another location, I would find out reasons to gripe about that, because I am a curmudgeon.
Well, it's well known that Craig suffers from anhedonia.
What is that?
And I think he's being punished by being put next to me, but that's for Shelton Trum to address.
Okay, trivia question. Did you know that the original title for Woody Allen's Annie Hall was Anhedonia?
I did know that. That's why I name-checked it.
There you go. Okay, another Woody Allen fan. So you're nominated for the what is the category title? It's your Walt Kelly book.
Exact title. It's archival reprint category or something like that. But before we talk about it, I do want to say this: HeroesCon is my favorite convention. Shelton is my favorite convention leader, and they know that. So enough said. On my book, Eisner nominated book. It is the Fairy Tales of the Walt Kelly's fairy tales, and Walt Kelly was the artist behind Pogo, and just a brilliant cartoonist. Before he did these fairy tales, he was a Disney animator on Snow White and Pinocchio and things like that. So he brought the right chops to drawing the comic book versions of fairy tales, and they've never had never been collected before I did my book, and it's full color, and we really pulled out all the stops on production values because we wanted to make the book like a keepsake, an heirloom kind of thing. So so I'm thrilled to be nominated, especially like when a hero of mine like Tom has been nominated to be on the same roster of nominees with Tom is a huge honor for me.
Craig is such a silver-tongued devil, and Derek, not to turn the tables on you, but I want to thank you for your efforts and your intelligent approach to discussing cartooning. I think you do a terrific job.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That makes me feel good. Wow.
A love fest we're having here.
Yeah. Well,
group hug.
Or it could be a weird love fest.
Yeah.
And how's this for a segue? I was just recently at a panel that Craig, you moderated, and that was on romance comics. And you said something by way of introduction that I thought was interesting. You said, you've done a lot of different collections, but the one that you've had the most fun with is Weird Love. So, and you weren't just saying that just because it was a romance panel?
No, I'm into Weird Love, Derek. So
as we well know, right?
No, Weird Love is our favorite book reprint project because it's just so much pure fun, and my wife Cleach and I just really love finding these old wackadoodle romance stories from the 50s and 60s, and like I Fell for a Commie, or Too Fat to Frug, or I Was Too Beautiful, which I personally relate to very much. And so we just have a lot of fun putting that collection together. The third volume just came out, and it features a story by the artist Bob Powell. I joined a teenage sex club. So it's a pretty good little story.
Now, have you found that the weird, wacky stories that you include in Haunted Horror, and that was your first serial, and then about a year and a half later, you began Weird Love. Have you found that the strangeness and the fascination with Weird Love, in certain ways, have maybe outpaced the weirdness and fascination of Haunted Horror?
Well, what can be more wonderful or horrific than love? Maybe the horror stories weren't consistently had a lot of weirdness, but actually a lot of the love stories comics from the comics were kind of predictable. Boy meets girl, girl cries, they get back together and get married or kiss in the last panel. They were usually predictable, but I think every once in a while the artists and writers got bored and said, let's try something like totally wacky different. And so that's when you get the Too Fat to Frug or I Fell for a Commie type stories. And so, when those come up, they just hit you with a big jolt. They really punch you right in the face, like in a way, because you're not expecting a really bizarro story in romance comics. So we dig deep to find those, put them all together. So.
You had that recent 3-issue series, Haunted Love. So that combined the two worlds.
Absolutely. We decided to combine the two worlds. A lot of the horror comics had a love angle to them. So we've been having so much fun with Weird Love and Haunted Horror, we decided to do a book called Haunted Love. And so that was a 3-issue miniseries. We might, if we find time, continue doing more. And there'll be a hardback collection of those 3 issues coming out on Valentine's Day. So look for that.
Do you think you'll extend that series beyond just those 3 issues?
If enough podcast readers support us, I guess we will, Derek.
Well, we reviewed that first issue when it came out several months ago, and we highly recommend it. So we're doing our part to make sure that word gets out on not just that, but I think all Yo books.
Yeah, if you let Tom give his URL, a shameless plug, if you don't mind, I'm going to say...
Plug away, my friend.
I love your podcast listeners to go to yobooks.com. That's YOEbooks.com, and check out what we do. We have a lot of fun in our reprint of classic artists and comics, and maybe they'd enjoy some of our books.
Now, I know that you guys are friends, but you have shared interest in comics history, and I'm wondering, Tom, with the kind of journalism that you do, and Craig with the kind of historical angle that you take, what have you done together, professionally, or maybe plans?
We did a story a long time ago about big events in cartooning that captured widespread media attention in a way that newspaper strips rarely do nowadays. And Craig wrote one of the essays in there, one of the best essays in that piece, about the death of Mary Gold and the Gumps. Do you remember that?
Yes, I sure do.
Yeah. So Craig has contributed to Hogan's Alley in a way that I still look back on very fondly.
I think that's the only thing I've had the pleasure of doing. I would love to do more with Tom. I think for a while at least you listed me on your masthead as a contributor, even though I only did that one little bit. So
sales stayed low, so we had to take your name off, try to give us a boost.
Yeah. So no, Tom, you and I should do something more together.
You're too damn busy.
No, that's true.
Well, it's like I'm bringing you guys together again. This is a podcast version of the dating game.
This is Weird Love. Tom and Craig coming together is Weird Love if ever Weird Love was weird.
With a dash of horror.
With a dash of horror.
Well, guys, thanks for taking the time and talking with the podcast. I'll surely see you later, probably at dinner tonight. So, hey, good luck with the rest of the Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Keep up the great work on the podcast, my fave.
I'm here with who I consider like one of the funniest guys writing in comics today, and that is Ryan Brown. Now you're not really blushing, but maybe metaphorically you're blushing. I do think you are funny as all get out. And listeners of the podcast know that your sense of humor, because you were on the podcast about, a year and a half ago? Maybe almost 2 years.
It's been a little while, yeah.
And last time I talked to you was here at HeroesCon. We talked briefly, and at that time I think you had told me that God Hates Astronauts was going to be wrapping up, but now it officially has.
Yeah, Image is not really a company that cancels books, but we just got to a situation where it was more than a full-time job, and I wasn't making a full-time living wage, so I had to shelve it for a while. But it continues to sell and trade, so I hope to bring it back at some point in the future. And the people that like it really, really love it, and that's been awesome. So, it's not officially done, but
that second volume.
But that second volume is done, yes.
So we can expect, perhaps, a third volume of God Hates Astronauts.
Yeah, I've started thinking about it and what it's going to be. For anyone that has read Volume 2, it has a bit of an intentional screw you cliffhanger, which I thought was really fun. It was my version of Monty Python's Holy Grail kind of ending. But now that I started thinking about where we'd go from there, and there were so many crazy things happening in that final issue. It's just like, what's gonna happen with the series now? Like, I kind of painted myself into a completely different world, I guess.
I mean, do you miss working on it for now, or had you gotten to the point that you just felt like you needed to give it a break?
I was, the last 3 issues, I was suffering from severe forearm tendonitis from just having to work too much. So I just couldn't do it anymore. So I had to, go through physical therapy and stuff, and now I'm back, and my drawing is better than ever, I think. But yeah, the rigors of writing, drawing, designing, and then I had to keep filling in on colors because my colorist was overbooked, and so it was just too much work, honestly. And it became a little bit less fun than it should have been. So, but hopefully, I feel pretty recharged, and I'm ready to do more weird stuff.
Well, speaking of weird stuff, another thing that you did since we last talked was a brand new version of Blast Furnace. And in fact, I was, part of that Kickstarter campaign. I bought into that. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. For those who did miss it, describe what the new Blast Furnace was all about.
Blast Furnace was an improv comic that I did where I spent only an hour writing and drawing each page. And there was no script, no forward thinking, and then no going back and editing whatsoever. So it's just, I called it an improv comic. And I originally did it, I wanted to do it for a year, 5 days a week for a year. But I did it for 6 months, and then no one was reading the webcomic, so I stopped. And then I printed a small version, a black and white version of it out, and that got a decent following. So last year I decided to go back and do the final 6 months, final 6 chapters of the book, and then I put it all together and I colored it and made it look fancy and did a Kickstarter. So, so that book came out, and I think it technically came out in January, and I just kind of sell it on my Etsy store.
Okay, because I remember getting my copy in like mid to late January, I believe it was.
Yeah, it took. There were printing issues that it got it delayed, and then I don't know. Then I started going back and like really like making sure everything was perfect, and it was taking longer for the book design, and like the title pages than I thought it was going to. I originally wanted everyone to get it in December, but I mean, I don't know. It's a 262 page book, so it was exhausting to work on.
Well, this is not going to do that Kickstarter any good now because it's already ended. But I strongly encourage our listeners to go to Kickstarter and look for this Blast Furnace campaign. It has to be one of the funniest damn videos that I've ever seen on Kickstarter. How did you? I mean, this. When I saw that, I thought, okay, it's perfect for you. Where did you come up with the idea for that particular approach to the Kickstarter campaign?
I think that the best Kickstarter videos, the most effective ones, are the ones where the creator is talking to the audience and makes it into like a personal statement. And those can be kind of dry, so my studio mate Mike Norton had dressed as Blast Furnace for Halloween one year, and so I got him to shave his beard down to the handlebar mustache and put the costume back on, and he kind of plays deadpan throughout the entire thing. It is like a good antidote to my peppy optimism in the video.
I know when Andy and I first saw that video, we said, "Is that Mike Norton?" And it was.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Okay, I didn't tell you this. I don't think I emailed you about this. Of course, now we have an annoying voiceover here at the con. But at the time of the Kickstarter, I actually used your Kickstarter video in my classroom. It was a class that dealt with digital communication, and at one point we were talking about platforms such as Kickstarter, Patreon, and I had my class look at several, like about 3-4 Kickstarter and Patreon videos to get a sense of what they thought worked and what they thought didn't, what was dry, what was active. And I think, needless to say, the class was laughing its ass off watching the Blast Furnace.
That's surprising. I don't know. I mean, I like, my humor is in my comics. It's not really in my performance ability. So, and I think a lot of people feel that when they're making their Kickstarters, they're terrified of that video. And it is horrifying. And I don't ever want to watch it again. But I'm glad that you guys thought it was funny.
Oh, yeah, they got a kick out of it. Now, I don't think anyone had heard of your work, and I tried to tell them about God Hates Astronauts, but to describe that to the uninitiated is quite difficult, as I'm sure you're well aware.
Oh, yeah.
And then I tried to explain Blast Furnace, but I thought, just let the video explain as best as possible. But they got a kick out of it, and yours was the last of the 3 or 4 that I showed, and by far it was the one that they enjoyed the most.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's great to hear. Now I feel like that video wasn't such a embarrassing video.
Exactly. So your work in one form or another is definitely being taught in college classrooms in certain places across the country.
I've made it. It's about time.
So in a kind of a vague way, without revealing anything, do you have any current projects that you may be working on?
Yeah, I'm working on a new image book that has not been announced. It will be coming out in January. That's about all I can say. It's going to be awesome. It's really pretty next level for me. And I'm working with collaborating with a writer who's really, really amazing. So I'm super excited about it. But, of course, I wanted to have so much done so that the book will never be late. So I've been working on it since March. And it won't come out till January of 2017. So I'm kind of looking at 2016 for not having any books on the shelf, which is a really kind of strange thing. But yeah, look for an announcement soon. And Image, I think, is pretty geeked about it, so we're going to make a real hard push for it.
And with Image, I mean, they require that you have a certain number of issues in the can before you, launch and announce?
Before you solicit. Okay. And they want 3 issues done before you solicit. We will probably have at least 4 done before we solicit. So by the time you guys will be reading issue 1, I will probably be working on issues, maybe finishing 5 and working on 6. That's probably where I'll be. So I will be really far ahead.
Will this be a limited or, as for now, an ongoing series?
It's ongoing.
Okay.
Yeah, we have pretty big plans for it. And the writer that I'm working with, has a pretty strong vision of what this whole thing is going to be. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I hope to, in the not-too-distant future, have you back on the podcast to talk about this in a little more detail.
Yeah, and I got a lot to say. It's a really awesome, fun idea. So I'm very excited for everyone to see it.
Yeah. Ryan, always a pleasure to talk with you on the podcast. And again, I hope to have you on very soon.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was fun.
I'm at the table of Andy Runton, who is the creative mind behind Owly. And Andy, how has the HeroesCon this year been for you?
HeroesCon is always one of my favorite shows. I've been doing it since, 2003, I think was the first time I came here. And it's one of those things where it's just such a great show. The atmosphere of this show is so incredible, and that's all because of the Heroes store in Charlotte. They're like the beacon, and so when it's lit, all of the fans, they attract really good people, people that love comics, and they are like, well, we want to find out more about this, and then they work hard to get the creators behind the books that are popular with the people there into the HeroesCon, and so it just all feeds together, and it's a wonderful experience.
Now, today is Sunday, the last day of the event. Yesterday was the busiest day. I saw more kids and more families yesterday than I did on Friday, and probably will see today. Did you notice an uptick in the interest of people around your booth with more kids around?
There are a lot of kids. We actually had a little Owly panel where we did like crafts and drawing and stuff like that, and did story time, and it was packed, and it was like, wow, that was incredible. That doesn't really happen at a lot of other shows, and that's a testament to just the Heroes store and just being just one of those things where it's comics is family, it's families, and we all grew up reading comics, and it's so great to see it continue that way. And it definitely was. There was a lot more kids. There's always a lot of kids here, but there was definitely more kids yesterday. Yeah.
Well, what kind of reaction with Owly, not just this weekend, but in general, do you get from adults or, let's say, mothers and fathers about Owly?
Well, it's funny. When I started doing this, I didn't think anybody would like it. I really didn't, because, I grew up reading comics, G.I. Joe and X-Men and everything. That's what I wanted to do, but I could never draw people. I just couldn't do it. And so I also love children's books, and so I was like, I'm going to sit down and write a children's book. But when I did, comics came out. That's what I did. So it was like, it was a kid-friendly comic. It's like, who's going to want that? But I was just like, well, this is it. Here it is. Who knows? And before you knew it, it was like people really, it struck a nerve, and it was like, wow, people really want this kind of stuff because they grew up reading comics. They want to share it with kids. They want to share, but I wrote it for myself. I didn't write it for kids. I wrote it for everybody. So it's just been a great experience in terms of the whole crowd that loves it. I get a lot of, I would say, probably 70 to 80% is female fans, but then there's a huge segment of that is kids. But then there's all ages up to grandparents and, middle-aged and younger. And so there's no real, that's why when it's all ages, it is all ages. It really works. So.
Well, I specifically wanted to talk with you because, as I was telling you before we turned on the mic, I have a fun space for Owly because when my firstborn was young and I wanted to introduce him to comics, I think the first title that I introduced him to was Owly. And he loved it. And then when his sister was born 3 years later, and then she got to where she could read comics and not tear them up, then I gave Owly to her. And so she's with me at the con, in fact, and we were walking by the other day, and she said, "Oh my God, Owly!" But you were busy talking to others, and so she didn't want to interrupt. But so anyway, Owly's meant a lot for my family, to me, and especially the kids who were big fans of that. So have you had instances of young people who read it when they were growing up, and now they're older, like about 16 or 17, and saying, "Wow," making you feel old. Yeah. Saying, I read it when I was a kid.
Yeah, no, they totally tell me, their parents bought them this, and they read it as a baby, is what they'll say. And it's just like a dagger to the heart, right? So, but then one of the neatest things is that with families, with kids, and with multiple kids, they'll say, well, she read it, and then she read it to her younger sister, or she read it to her younger brother, or he read it to his younger sister. And that's the neat thing. It's like they actually share it with their siblings, so it's real special.
I'm trying to think. When I picked up my first issue of Alley, was it Slave Labor Graphics?
No,
Graphics. What was it?
Top Shelf.
Top Shelf. Okay, I couldn't remember where it was. I knew it was one of the smaller publishers, so it was with Top Shelf. But it's no longer with Top Shelf?
So it was. What I did was it was a 5-year contract with Top Shelf. So I renewed it, and then I did another 5 years. And in that process, I've learned a lot about comics, and so I do all the design, I do all the layout and everything like that. And there's at the time, 2003, that was before crowdsourcing or really, mobile internet or anything like that. And so nowadays, I just wanted to try something myself. So I thought about maybe doing self-publishing, doing it myself, and talking to Terry Moore and his wife about that. And they've always done it themselves. And so I had an experience with Simon & Schuster. I did 2 kids' books, and there was so much editorial control that after that experience, I just wanted to just try it all on my own. So I just said, you know what? I'm going to try this on my own. So I didn't renew my contract, and then shortly after that, Top Shelf actually sold to IDW. They're just an imprint of IDW now. So, but even so, it's one of those things. I want to try it myself, and I just finished penciling the newest Alley book, and I'm going to be inking it, and then I'm going to do a Kickstarter for it. So and then
look forward to that.
Yeah, so I'm excited about it. I'm scared, but there's a lot of things to learn, because the thing about comics is it's a small industry, but you've got to understand all the pieces of it. You can't just say, well, I'm just going to do art and I'm not going to care about it, because if your books don't sell, it's over. So you've got to really work it, and it's about relationships with the stores and relationships with the fans. That's what's drawn me to comics. It's just so complicated and so cool like that, So
now you mentioned the books with Simon & Schuster. They're in print Anthenium, and these are Alley and Wormy, Friends All Aflutter, and then Alley and Wormy, Bright Lights and Starry Nights. Now, what are some of the differences that you feel went into the creation of these kind of books, which are more like, I guess, picture books than the comics that you did? I mean, was one dramatically different to create than the other, or was it a natural transition going from one to the other?
It's hard, because in the books, this is strange to say, but like in a monthly comic, it has to be 32 pages, and then with ads and all that stuff, you only have like 28, and you've got to fit the story, and you plot it all out. It's not really the way I work. So with the graphic novels, they vary in length. They're usually just over 100 pages, but it changes. And so I'll take pages out and put pages in, and I just kind of let the story evolve. With the picture books, they were going to be 48 pages, and they were going to spread out the panels so that it was easier for kids to read. It sounded like a great idea. And then they cut it back to like 36 pages or something like that. And so I had these stories written, and I had to edit them down. So a lot of it was not being able to tell the story I wanted to tell in the way I wanted to tell it, having to make sure that everything was super clear, and just being frustrated with people that really, they had their own stories in mind, and they weren't the stories I wanted to tell. So I'm really happy with the way the books turned out, but it took a long time to get to that point where they would send me back notes of like revisions, and I would have to take those and not do exactly what they said, but think about what the problem was and fix it in my own way. And it just, the whole process, it was like you're walking down a street, and then all of a sudden you're walking through mud, and it's just that feeling of just, I'm being weighed down by this process, and I didn't enjoy it. I mean, I used to be a designer, so I was in the corporate world for a long time. I understand about compromise and all that kind of stuff, but this was different, and it just didn't feel right, so.
Okay, so you felt a little more constrained in terms of the editing and production with Simon & Schuster, but I would think that maybe something that would help offset that would be the fact that this is Simon & Schuster, so with distribution it could reach a much wider audience. Was that a benefit?
Yeah, that was the theory. So I'll just tell you about it. So what happened was I actually signed with an editor. Her name was Jenny So, and she had her own imprint of Simon & Schuster. And right before the book actually started, I had just signed. She loved Owly. She was super excited about it. And then we were getting ready to start the book, and she decided to leave the company.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so she was going to change to another company, and then she was going to try to bring Owly to the new company, but it was 2008, and it was right when the economy was having a hard time, and it was right when Borders Books was getting ready to go out of business. There was a lot of flux in the publishing world, and she could not find another job. And so I ended up being stuck with Simon & Schuster without an editor who they weren't really my editor. They didn't really get it. So I had to constantly explain, yes, this is an owl. He doesn't talk. He uses symbols, and he has a worm friend, and they wanted to change the worm to somebody else. And it was like, no, that's not why you hired me to do this. And so it was just a lot of justification and just trying to work that. And what happened is I did get in the end, after the fees and everything, like about $40,000 for both books. The problem is that stretched out to 5 years worth of work. So that's not a lot of money, and I had to dedicate so much of my time to the books with conventions and everything like that. I was barely making it. And so you're stuck. And it's like, it seems like a great idea, and it would have been okay, even if it only taken 2 years, it would have been okay. But it wasn't worth it in the end, so...
So self-publishing, you have more risk, but more control, and maybe more sense of mind that you can get this done.
Well, the thing is that you do get royalty. I mean, this is so inside baseball kind of stuff about this, but most of these people here, when they're doing especially graphic novelists, they don't get paid while they're working on the book. The book may take a year, and they're not getting paid during that time until the book comes out, right? And so you're barely making by, and then you're depending on your publisher to have really good communication with you, like how's the book selling, what are they doing to help promote it. I didn't get any of that from Simon & Schuster. In terms, you find out later, but the way the bookstores work, every book is returnable. So comic book stores are non-returnable. That's why people get stuck with issues and stuff like that. But a bookstore, when you walk into a bookstore and they got like 20 issues or something, or 20 copies, they can send them all back at any time. And so you don't really get paid until it's verified that it was sold. So it's a very weird process, and it really only works if you sell a lot of books. And so Owly was actually successful in those numbers, but not in the way that you would think. It's one of those things you see in the bookstore. It doesn't mean success. You see in the comic book store, it doesn't mean that you're gonna. You just got to keep working. You just got to keep going at it. So
now you mentioned your Kickstarter. When do you think that will be up and running?
Yeah, I was reticent to mention it, because I want what I've bought stuff on Kickstarter and it's taken years to get, and I do not want to do that. And so I actually work with rescue dogs, and they've taken up a huge amount of my time. And so inking the book is important, but there are daily things that I have to do for the dogs. And so I'm not sure how long it's going to take me to ink the book. Hopefully I can ink the new book in about 2.5 months, so I can get and as soon as it's done and inked, that's when I'm going to launch the Kickstarter, because I want to make sure it's done, ready to go. Because it'll take about a month and a half to get it printed, and then it'll be in your hands after it ships. So
yeah, well, good for you for thinking of the people who were backing you because I think often creators don't.
Yeah, I mean, you want the money, but you don't. I don't need. I need the money. I desperately need the money, but I don't want to disappoint people. This is a really important thing, and I want to make sure, because I'm not just relaunching. I'm not just kickstarting the book. I'm going to use the money I make to get the other books back in print, and so I really need people to believe in it and feel good about it, and not be upset that it took so long.
In the meantime, where can our listeners go to find out more about Owly and actually get copies of the Owly books?
So you can find all the Owly graphic novels now on Comixology, so you can buy them digitally. And I still have a few of the old copies that I sell through my website, and I sign them and everything like that. It's just andyrunton.com, ANDYRUNTON.com.
Okay, so that's where they can find you.
That's right, that's me. I just sell it all. It's just me. It's a very small business.
Yeah. Well, Andy, thank you very much for taking the time and talking with the Comics Alternative. Good luck with this last day of HeroesCon.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
I'm here with Enrica Jang. She is the creative mind behind, or one of the creative minds behind a couple of recent Poe adaptations, Edgar Allan Poe adaptations, that we've talked about on the Comics Alternative. We reviewed last year your recent adaptation of The Cask of Amontillado, and we've talked about, although we haven't discussed yet in detail, The House of Montresor. So
someone is a trade waiter.
That's right, I'm a trade waiter. I didn't read the individual issues. But Enrica, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Thank you so much. We love this show. HeroesCon is a great show.
It is, and I'm glad that you're here and that we're talking, because you and I were corresponding via Twitter after we did that review of Cask of Amontillado, and you corrected me on the pronunciation of your last name.
I very gently corrected you, because I was so happy to have been included in the podcast, so it was a small price to pay.
And, you know, I really enjoyed that adaptation because I thought that you guys... Well, okay, first and foremost, I don't think that you have to be, quote-unquote, true to the original in order for it to be a successful adaptation. You can be, but you don't have to be. I mean, I think that, though, that you did a very good job at trying to be, again, true, quote-unquote true, without feeling that you were chained to what Poe did in the original story, and I really appreciated that.
A lot of it, thank you, I really appreciate that, and I owe quite a debt to Jason Strutz, because he... obviously, you work out the script and you're working with Poe's words and trying to sort of storyboard the whole thing. But then Jason really understood the heart of the story, and he brought all of that out. And so you see that in his art, and he does a wonderful job. So a huge debt to Jason for that. But I think we made some decisions, and they were intentional and to mixed review. We were really happy that you guys liked the decisions that we made to, for instance, turn it into a third-person story, and that was very intentional. Not a lot of people. There's some people who didn't, and because purists or just people lovers of Poe, when you change things a little bit, you're hurting their feelings a little bit. So, but this was very intentional because we were setting the scene for the sequel. So it was our prequel to the sequel.
Yeah, and I can't remember if we speculated on this when Gwen and I reviewed this several months ago, but it just made sense that you would shift the point of view from first to third person for a couple of reasons. One, sometimes first person is a little tricky when it comes to visual storytelling like comics, but I think more importantly, it helps you to set the stage, as you pointed out, with this next work, which is not an adaptation, but a spin-off of this story with The House of Montresor.
Yeah. It's set 50 years after the events as described in Poe's original story. And you sort of going back over Poe's story, I felt a little bit like, it's not an autopsy, but it was definitely sort of this forensic discovery, going through line by line and sort of seeing these different things that Poe hinted at about Fortunato's life. And when the killer hints at the end that, 50 years later, he got away with it. But who's he telling this story to? What's the reason behind this sort of perverse confession, if you will? And he sounds like he's gloating, but who's he talking to?
Yeah.
So that was the desire to use that element of it and really develop that for the sequel.
So where did the idea of the first adaptation, The Cask of Amontillado, come? Did you guys particularly like this story and wanted to adapt that, or did you have an idea for the spin-off, The House of Montresor, and then started with that idea and then went back to adapt Cask of Amontillado?
The latter. It was definitely the latter. I'm a literature major from way back, so Poe was one of my first loves, and I always knew that I wanted to celebrate his writing. Also, we had done, my company, Red Stylo Media, had done an anthology called the Poe Twisted Anthology, and it was a collection of comics inspired by Poe. So the idea was to go away from adaptation and tell new stories, new generation of stories inspired by this master's work. And so that exercise, of course, you go through this, but when we were doing the invitations for our anthology, hey, think of a Poe story that you really love and change it. A lot of people said Cask of Amontillado, and I very deviously said, sorry, someone else has that one. That was mine.
Were there other Poe short stories that you, or even poems, that you thought about adapting or are thinking about possibly adapting in the future?
You can't help but sort of wonder, you had this wonderful experience with Cask, so wouldn't it be great to continue? No plans as yet, but I do have a plan for House of Montresor. The current series is only 4 parts and collected into a trade, and it has a nice sort of ending point, but that's not the entire story. There's a lot more that happened over 50 years, and it would be really great to tell that story if we could.
So we may see more of the House of Montresor in the months to come, perhaps.
Wait in silence.
Pardon?
We might.
Okay, good. Yeah. So you were talking about some of the people who, let's say, felt a little mixed or aren't that enamored of your adaptation. Did it deal with that shift in point of view, or were there other issues, like maybe diehard Poe fans thought that you did something that they didn't like?
It was very much about the point of view, and I think each time that we had seen sort of a pushback on it, it was about that third person, because the original story is told in the first person, and you're seeing into this man's mind, so it doesn't really matter as much in the original. Why is he doing what he's doing? Because you see all this emotion, and you're privy to the killer's thoughts. So taking all of that away, there's a reason we're taking all of that away later, but it's a shift for some people. So if they love the original and they want to be inside Montresor's mind, and they miss that. But I think the events are important too, and why he's doing it's important.
Yeah, and I can understand how Poe lovers may grumble a bit at the change of first-person point of view, because a lot of Poe stories do have this confessional feel to them. I mean, I'm thinking of The Imp of the Perverse, which starts off as an essay but then turns into a first-person revelation, and you have something similar going on with the Telltale Heart, right? Someone's talking about, almost in a confessional way, what they did in order to get it out, but then that raises the question that you alluded to: who are they talking to, and why are they telling us, the reader, what they're telling us? So what's going on psychologically behind the narration?
That's very much, and this sort of the logic behind our tagline: murder is only perfect if everybody knows you got away with it. Yeah. So that's playing with that concept. That was a huge theme in the sequel. So I'm excited.
So okay, what about the art of adaptation draws you? In other words, outside of you loving Poe, what is it about taking a work of not just classic literature, or not necessarily classic literature, but a narrative in a different medium, and then bringing it to comics form?
I think it's a little bit like, I call it calling your shot. As a creator, people ask you what are your inspirations, and so there's no shame in sort of rattling off, I love Poe, I love Stephen King, I love different literature, I love different artists, and this is inspiration. To actually call the shot and say, I'm going to follow in the footsteps of this great love and pit myself against that. That's a challenge. That very much is, and you're telling people, hey, compare me to. But I suppose I've joked about this before. I suppose there's a little bit of safety in it too, because if I don't measure up to Poe, well, it is Poe, so I don't have to feel too bad about that.
Yeah. And also, not only do you have the great name of Poe that you're associating yourself with now, made me think of the history of artists who have taken Poe and brought them to comics. I mean, the standout name for me is Richard Corbin, who has probably done more Poe adaptations than anyone else that I'm aware of. Did you look at any of those past adaptations of Poe, either Richard Corbin or other, as any kind of inspiration or starting off point, or maybe even the kind of art to work against when you did the Cask of Amontillado and then the House of Montresor?
I don't really think that was as much of a consideration. I did know that rather than just adapt, rather than retell a classic, we did want to bring something new to the table, and we did want to continue in that tradition and have fun with it. So there was a joy in that, getting to play in that sandbox, I guess you could say. But it's such a rich tradition. I wasn't worried. I was very happy to jump in and be part of that tradition and to do that. So not so much a comparison and more of a I want to play too.
Okay. So in addition to what you had kind of teased about a moment ago, maybe something else when it comes to the House of Montresor, is there anything else that you're currently working on or plan on working on in the very near future?
We are doing a Kickstarter campaign right now for a series called Crossing, and it's completely different. It's a modern-day series, paranormal mystery. It's about an annoying goth princess who throws herself in front of a commuter train, and she swears that her death was a murder made to look like a suicide, and she is haunting the one person who can see her, which is the conductor. And he feels that he, saw this whole thing. He knows what happened. She's clearly deranged, and he just doesn't really know what's going on. Somebody's haunting him, and he doesn't know how to get rid of this person. But together, there's a mystery that they have to solve if they ever want to be free of each other. So we're working on that right now.
And this is currently being kickstarted?
Yes. So we actually funded in 31 hours, which was pretty exciting. And
so everything now is icing on the cake.
Oh, yes. Well, we have a lot we want to do. And there are going to be 6 issues in this series. So Alex Cormack and I have worked together. We actually worked on Poe Twisted. So 6 years ago was my very first anthology working on a Poe themed project. So this is a really great way for us to continue working together.
And what is the end date of the Kickstarter?
July 8th.
Okay, so this episode will be going up this third week. I guess we're in the third week of June. So as you're listening to this, if you're interested, definitely check out. You can find it's called Crossing, or you can, I guess, just check by Enrica Jang and Alex Cormack. Look it up on Kickstarter, and you can still get on the fun.
Absolutely. We've got a lot more stuff to do.
Now, in addition to checking out the Kickstarter, how else can people find out about your work? Where can they go online?
We're very lucky to be on Comixology and on Amazon, so please search the name. But you can also look to my company, Red Stylo Media, redstylo.com.
Okay. Well, Enrica, thank you very much for talking with us, and it's nice to meet you in person.
I'm so excited to meet you. Thank you very much.
I'm with Oliver Ono. He is with Spitball, which is the Columbus College of Art and Design comics anthology. So, Oliver, how has HeroesCon been for you this year?
Super exciting. This is actually Spitball's first time coming up and being able to show off our book at any kind of big con out of Ohio, at least. So it's been really great, yeah.
Now, I told you before I turned on the mic that I have heard of Spitball, but I've never seen an issue of Spitball, this comics anthology. And so I would like for you to educate me and, by association, our listeners as to Spitball, what it's all about, how long it's been going on, all of that. Give us the lowdown.
I gotcha. So Spitball just started last year. What we do is that through the Columbus College of Art and Design, CCAD, we take professional comic writers that are in the business, and then get them paired with us students, and then we come together. Each writer makes a 5-page script, and then we come together and make a 5-page comic. It all gets thrown together into a big comics anthology, and that's about the half of it. Yeah.
Okay, so you get writers who write the scripts, and then the students do the art to those scripts?
Yes, sir. So the writers do pretty much all of the planning, and then we collaborate back and forth. We've had some pretty big names. We've had Matt Fraction last year. This year, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Jonathan Hickman, who I actually worked with, Grace Ellis. Oh, the list goes on. It's all through our professor, Lauren McCubbin, who's kind of all in the industry, and she really facilitates the whole thing.
Yeah. Now, you said you worked with Jonathan Hickman. How was that experience?
Oh, it was really great, really great. I hadn't had much experience reading any of his stuff before, but as soon as I got the name and looked into it and everything, my mind was absolutely blown. Intimidating, but he was really great to work with, yeah.
Okay, so basically you gave yourself a crash course in Jonathan Hickman. So when you learned that, okay, I'm going to be working with Jonathan, what did you start reading? How did you start preparing yourself for this?
So I got into the whole east to west thing. I looked at that, and he was very, very, very specific. And, he's very... he plays a good role in not only the storytelling elements, but he actually really guided me along with how he wanted the visuals to look and everything. So then I was just doing a lot of footwork, and while we would have a couple things where we went back and forth kind of deciding on how we were going to do, I think that we came up with something that we both were really happy with, yeah.
Okay. So how many students are involved with the Spitball Anthology on any given year?
For sure. So for both years so far, we've ended up having 9 students do it. I believe that the maximum that they do it is 10, and it just depends on a portfolio selection process that you have to apply for like the semester before. But yeah, and then we get the writers to fill the gaps.
Okay. So who functions as editor of the anthology?
So we have a student editor, at least assistant editor, but she's really the one that helps us together. This year it was Alyssa Salah, who's actually just Friday left to go and work at MilkFed, so that's really exciting. We're all really happy for her. So she kind of acts as the student editor, but then of course the professor, Lauren McCubbin, does all of the overseeing of the editing. So yeah.
Okay, and how often will it be coming out? Is this an annual anthology?
Correct. So every year we're going to have a new thing. I think that they're doing it so that we can only have each student participate 2 years. But yeah, hopefully in like 5 or 10 years they'll still be coming out with them.
So right now we have 2 issues of Spitball. And which one, okay, I'm looking at a couple here, which our listeners can't see because this is not a video podcast. Which is the most recent?
So it has a green cover.
Oh, I see. Number 2 on it now.
Spitball number 2, yeah, for sure. We actually just dropped it at HeroesCon here. We had to ship out some real quick copies before even the whole stock ships for us. So yeah, we're super excited to debut here.
Okay. Now, where can listeners get a copy of Spitball?
So we do have a big cartel if we are not going to be going to any of the cons. I believe it's just under Spitball for that one. CCAD Spitball, maybe. But other than that, we are going to be at SPX and then at the New Comics kind of overall festival, Columbus Crossroads... Cartoon Crossroads Columbus in Columbus, Ohio, of course. So we're really excited to be showing it around.
So if someone is not at one of these cons that you mentioned where they can get a copy, they can go to Big Cartel?
Big Cartel, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything you can tell us about who may be lined up in terms of the writers for next year's volume?
Well, we've had Chris Sabella do both years, so he might be making a return. Honestly... Lauren knows so many people over at Image that it's likely that if you like a lot of Image stuff, you're going to end up seeing some stuff in here from them.
Oh, that's great to look forward to because I know a lot of our listeners appreciate Image because we talk about a lot of Image on the podcast. So, Oliver, it was great talking with you, and good luck on this final day of HeroesCon.
Hey, thanks a lot.
It was last year that Andy and I talked with Jeremy Hahn and Jason Hurley on the eve of the publication of The Beauty #1. And right now, I'm with both of those guys at HeroesCon 2016. And I want to find out how things have gone for the first narrative arc. What do you think that the response was?
So far, it's been pretty good. We've had really good reviews, good response from readers, especially at the show. People coming up and telling us they like it. And sales have been pretty good as well. We're pretty happy.
You never know when you're putting something out there. You know, you put it out, you hope it does well, and we've been pretty blown away by the response.
Yeah. You know, one of the things we talked about last year when the first issue was about to come out was, I guess, the potential provocative nature of this, right? I mean, the premise is that there's an STD that's going around, but it's making people beautiful. But then there's a dark underside to that. So I'm wondering if that... the STD angle, do you feel that that's what got a lot of people on board initially?
I definitely think that it's an easy hook. You know, if you say it's an STD that makes you beautiful, you know, there's a significant, you know, number of readership that's like, what? Okay, what? I want to look at that. You know, and there's always going to be somebody that's going to be offended by something, but I think that most people get it.
Yeah, I'm sure that it's turned off a few people, but it's made it a really easy pitch for us. You know, you got that one sentence that you throw out, and people know immediately from that one sentence whether they're going to be interested or not. So,
well, and you know, I mean, I really try to respect people and you know what they want to do, but this is the story we're telling, and if it's not for somebody, then it's not for somebody. That's fine.
Well, have you had someone contact you guys and go, I'm offended, I have to tell you, or anything negative going on? Or do they keep their thoughts to themselves, I guess?
And I can't believe in this world anybody keeps their thoughts to themselves.
We have a child who has misplaced her parents. She's at the information booth. This child's name is Rihanna Turner.
And we hear an announcement for a missing child.
It's always the best. I mean, not missing. I'm not saying missing children is the best, but an announcement mid-interview. Look, I'm surprised anybody. Everybody's offended at everything now, and some of it needs to be said, some of it doesn't, and but we've really
we've had surprisingly few negative responses, which I mean, great. I was expecting more, but I'm happy to have as few as we've had.
I think it's part of it's the intent of how you go into anything. We're wanting to shine a light on something. We're wanting to look at it in the right way. We're also trying to do it with a significant amount of respect to all of the things that we're addressing. We feel pretty passionately about what we're doing, and we want to do it right.
Well, I know that at the very beginning, you guys utilized social media to get the word out with that really effective Beauty Free campaign. What was the result of that from where you're sitting?
A lot of work for us.
Yeah. Well, like how so?
No, the Beauty Free campaign, basically we did the hashtag Beauty Free, and then we invited people to take a selfie and do a meme hashtag, and we put them out there, and we ended up with hundreds of people doing this, and the response was fantastic. But it was, then we had to collate all of those, and take. Social media is a fantastic thing, but it does require a good amount of time and understanding about what you're doing.
Yeah, and then a lot of time editing, cropping those pictures to get everything to fit on the pages within the book, because we did a couple pages in the back of one of the issues with a lot of those pictures in there.
We still need to do another one, because in the second
we have
arc,
a bunch left over.
We just kind of kept getting them. It's I think that is the nice thing about people getting excited. They consistently contact us. They're always sending us Beauty Free meme pictures and stuff like that. It's fun, and it's a definite reminder that you're hitting your audience in the right, in the non-abusive way.
Well, are people still sending those to you?
Yeah, we still get them every once in a while, and if anybody wants to send them in, we still welcome them. And like I say, we'll do another set of them in the back of an issue here in the near future.
I remember right after the interview we did with you last year, we did one. We took it wasn't a selfie, we took our caricatures, but we put the Beauty Free tag on there.
Yeah. It was cute. Not as cute as if it actually been your faces, but
Well, another thing that you guys have done to help publicize the beauty is the use of condoms. And in fact, last year when we were here at HeroesCon, Jeremy, I met you for the first time, and you gave me the brochure and then the condom. I had to explain that to my wife. She found the condom in my stuff and said, "What is this?" So I said, it's part of a campaign to publicize a new comic book series. But you're continuing to use condoms, and in fact, Jason was telling me that you have colors specific to specific events.
Right. Yeah. Every different show, we have a different color. For Heroes today, we have a blue condom. In New York, we had a red. We just change them out with each show and use them for promotion.
Yeah, ironically, we're actually using condoms to help spread the idea of this STD, even though that's not really what they're meant for.
Now, have you had fans who've gotten condoms that tell you about the way that they've used them?
A couple, yeah.
We've actually had some reports back on their effectiveness and comfort. Let's call it comfort.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this seems to be successful enough to where it's going to be going for a while. Do you have an idea about how long, generally, you think this will go for?
At the moment, we're looking at about 5 arcs. We can
30 to 40 issues, somewhere in there.
Yeah, we can stretch that. Stretch is actually the wrong. I really we only want to tell as many stories as fit. We don't want to pad it. We want to tell the stories we want to tell. There are a lot of things we really want to examine. So, along the way, we've definitely created scenarios and characters that we want to take a look at. And so we're just going to do it until we're done.
Well, I hope that next year at HeroesCon, both of you are here and I can talk with you about an update on the continued success of the Beauty.
Right. Thank you very much.
Hopefully we'll have the year 2 discussion.
Yeah. Well, guys, have fun with the last of HeroesCon.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, man.
So, Andy, when I ended the day on Sunday and we were packing up and going home, I thought to myself, I did a few interviews, but then I got home and counted up the number, and wow, that's more than I thought.
Yeah, well, good for you.
Yeah.
And I will, I enjoy the product of your labor.
Okay.
As I hope our listeners do too.
Yeah. But it's always fun talking to these guys. Some of these creators we've spoken with before. I mean, obviously we've had both Andy Hirsch and Craig Yo on the show a number of times. Also people like Ryan Brown, Jeremy Hahn, Jason Hurley. But I got to talk to the people for the very first time, and meet them for the very first time, like Carla Pacheco, Andy Runton, whose work that I've known for quite a long time, but this is the first time I met him. And of particular interest was my conversation with Amanda Rachels, the first brief interview that I did, because she came up to our table and introduced herself to me because she's a big fan of the show.
Yeah, that's always nice to hear from creators as well that they listen to our show. So thanks to Rachel for all to stop by.
That's right. Had a great time at the con and an even better time talking with those folks. And if you want to find some great discounts on the kind of comics that we discussed in these various interviews, then be sure you check out our sponsor, Discount Comic Book Service. In fact, if you go to dcbservice.com right now and put in the names of various people that we interviewed at HeroesCon, you'll find many of them have titles at deep discounts. So definitely check them out.
That's right.
That's right. And after you do get your comics there, get in touch with us and let us know what you thought about our interviews at HeroesCon this year. If you go to the website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find that you can leave us a voice message through the wonders of SpeakPipe, which is fairly easy to use. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way. Our phone number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
That's right. Or you can get a hold of us by email. We are 2guys@comicsalternative.com. Or if you want to write to either of us individually, I'm Andy at comicsalternative.com.
And I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com.
And we also have our Twitter feed where we let you know about updates to the podcast as well as new content for the blog. So you can check out our Twitter feed at the number 2 guys with PhDs.
That's right. You can also find us on other areas of social media such as Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Google+, Goodreads, Pinterest, and YouTube. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on TuneIn. You can listen to us via Spotify. And if you're an Android user, you can hear us on Google Play Music. But you can still find every single one of our episodes as well as the reviews and the comics-related commentary that we post on our blog by going to our website, comicsalternative.com.
That's right. All the ways to get a hold of us and let us know how we're doing.
That's right. We had a good time talking with these folks at the con, and we'll be doing more of that later this year at other cons. Until then, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy. See ya.